Hi, this is Lance Edwards, and this is your video synopsis for chapter number 1, opening chapter. This is called Stilt Cabin at marker number 63, and I'm filming this here. These are mangroves right here behind me. You can see up along the water line. Mangroves are indigenous to subtropical Florida. This is the only state in the entire United States where you can find mangroves. And so our story begins in the Everglades National Park, particularly the 10,000 Islands. And coincidentally, the story is going to end there. I'm going to give you a little foretaste of what's going to come in Chapter 10. In Chapter 1, I introduced the Robalo Club. This is a group of Lakeland men that formed the Robalo Club in the mid-60s to pursue their passion of robalo, which is the Spanish name for a game fish, Florida game fish called snook. Snook are only found in the United States in subtropical Florida and in the far southern reaches of Texas, but it is the passion for snook fishing that drives a lot of activity, including yours truly. The Robalo Club was formed in 1965 with the intent to do the impossible. They actually bought a parcel of land in the middle of the Everglades National Park, which is a phenomenal bureaucratic blunder by the federal government, but they were able to buy a small parcel, and they actually built a stilt cabin. It was on stilts, on piers, in the middle of the national park, and for the next 10 years, it was the scene of the stories that I tell in that book. The Robalo Club was a bunch of interesting characters. I characterize them as the redneck rat pack in the book. You're going to love the stories that I read in there, and it's in the Everglades that my old Florida training began. My real education began down there, being around those Robalo Club members, being amongst old Florida, those mangroves, and everything great about it. One of the characters you're going to read about is Dewey George. The way we used to we'd fish snook. Robalo is snook congregate, live under these mangrove overhanging limbs. They're phenomenal fighting fish. They're phenomenal eating fish. They're also fantastically lazy fish, and they lay up under the shade of the mangrove limbs, waiting for some bait to come by. Well, those bait we would fish with casting reels like this with artificial lures, in which we would cast all day long up under those mangrove limbs to put a bait, artificial bait, in front of that snook. This is my very first rod and reel, by the way. My dad gave this to me when I was age 7. This is 50 years old. I've retained it all the years. I don't use it anymore. I could. It's in perfect working condition, but this is from my first trip to the Everglades back in 1960s. And so I describe that first trip in the book, and I also describe Dad's final trip. This is much later in life when Brian and I started returning. This is long after the cabin was gone. And you're going to find, I think, very poignant, and it's just a magical place, and it's very much old Florida, and so it was very much appropriate I choose that to launch the story of As It Should Be. And in there I also talk about how everything is connected, everything happens for a reason. That stilt cabin from 50 years ago, what led to me living now, today, 50 years later, amongst the mangroves with my own stilt cabin, just a little bit over that way, right here on the Gulf of Mexico. So I hope you enjoy Chapter 1. It's very special to me. It's called Stilt Cabin by marker number 63.